If Rocky hadn't barked, no one would have questioned a thing. Not the sweet nurse with the perfect white teeth. Not the care facility that ran smoother than most hospitals. And certainly not the administrator who swore that every patient was in exceptional hands. But K9 Rocky, a golden brown German shepherd trained for narcotics, tracking, and alert detection, had never barked without cause. And the way he stood rigid in the middle of the hallway at Briar Ridge Care Center, ears pinned back, eyes locked on Nurse Madison Bell's gloved hand, it was more than a bark. It was a warning. Briar Ridge sat nestled on a quiet stretch of upstate New York, surrounded by aging oak trees and whispering pines. It was the kind of place adult children dreamed of placing their aging parents into, clean, calm, and picturesque. The kind of place that gave you peace of mind. Officer Travis Hale had only been called there twice in the last 3 years, once for a misplaced wedding ring, and once for a false fire alarm. That morning's call seemed just as routine. A concerned daughter reported that her mother, Mrs. Langley, had been admitted to the ER after collapsing in her room. No prior health complications. No signs of distress. Just sudden, unexplained respiratory failure. Travis didn't expect to find anything criminal. He brought Rocky along just to stretch his legs. Officer Hale. A cheerful voice greeted him as he stepped through the automatic doors of Briar Ridge. Madison Bell stood behind the front desk, a radiant smile stretched across her face. Her uniform was pristine, her badge clipped neatly to her breast pocket. She carried herself like the head nurse, though Travis later learned she was technically just a night supervisor. "Can I offer you a coffee?" she asked brightly. "You'll want to take the elevator to the East Wing, room 218. Mrs. Langley's daughter asked for a wellness check, but I assure you, everything's fine now." Rocky didn't like her. Travis noticed it immediately. His partner wasn't one to growl without reason, but as Madison bent down to offer him a pet, Rocky stepped back, then gave a low, rumbling bark. Madison's smile didn't fade. She merely laughed and said, "He must not like hospitals, huh?" But Travis caught the flash of tension behind her eyes. The way her gloved hands subtly shifted behind her back. Room 218 was clean. Too clean. The bed was freshly made. The curtains drawn just enough to let in the perfect amount of sun. But Rocky made a beeline for the side table and sat rigidly beside it. He gave a short whine, pawing at the lower drawer. Travis opened it. Nothing but magazines, tissues, and a folded white cloth. A disinfectant wipe, probably. But Rocky leaned in and sniffed it closely, then sneezed and backed away, as if the scent offended him. Travis made a mental note. Something about it didn't sit right. He returned to the hallway where Nurse Madison was now speaking with another orderly, laughing softly as she handed out charts. She moved gracefully, controlled, precise. "Mind if I ask a few questions?" Travis said, stepping beside her. "Of course," she said, still smiling. "I was the one who checked on Mrs. Langley last night. She was having trouble sleeping, so I gave her some herbal tea and tucked her in. Next thing I knew, she'd collapsed. Poor thing. But she's stable now, right?" Travis nodded, but kept his eyes on her hands. Still wearing gloves. Still holding a small white cloth. "Mind if Rocky gives that a sniff?" he asked casually. She blinked. "This?" She lifted it. "It's just a cleaning rag. I've been wiping down doorknobs, flu season, you know." Rocky stepped forward again. His nose twitched violently. And then, without warning, he barked. A sharp, echoing bark that startled even the staff down the hall. Madison stepped back instinctively. "Is he always like that?" "No," Travis said flatly. "He isn't." Back in the patrol SUV, Travis reviewed the resident chart for Mrs. Langley. No sedatives listed. No breathing issues. No DNR order. He called the hospital. The attending physician mentioned something odd, traces of an unknown sedative in Mrs. Langley's system. Not a standard medication. And certainly not prescribed. It was a red flag. Not enough for an arrest. But enough to look deeper. By the end of the day, Travis had quietly requested security camera footage from the east hallway. The administrator hesitated, citing privacy policies. But one of the younger staffers, a CNA named Jamie, slipped him a USB drive later that evening in the parking lot. "She gives me the creeps," Jamie whispered. "Too perfect. Anne. I've seen her go into rooms she's not assigned to. Especially with the older residents who can't speak up for themselves." That night, Travis couldn't sleep. He sat on his porch, the autumn air biting at his cheeks, laptop on his lap, Rocky lying quietly by his feet. He watched the footage from the night before. Midnight. The hallway lights dimmed. Residents asleep. Then Madison appeared. She walked slowly, almost dreamlike, down the corridor. She stopped at room 218. Opened the door. Went inside. And after 3 minutes, exited. Without the cloth. Travis leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Rocky stirred beside him, ears twitching as if to say, "You see it too now, don't you?" The cloth was missing. And someone had tried to make an old woman disappear, quietly, painlessly, permanently. But Rocky wasn't going to let that happen. Not on his watch. Officer Travis Hale pulled into the Briar Ridge parking lot just after 7 a.m., coffee in hand and K9 Rocky in the back seat, already alert. The rising sun stretched over the pine-lined property, casting long shadows across the quiet walkways. On the surface, the place looked like something out of a magazine, a peaceful senior living community with trimmed hedges, chirping birds, and fresh American flags posted out front. But something about it didn't sit right anymore. And Rocky, restless, tense, sniffing the air, knew it too. Inside, the staff moved like clockwork. Fresh linens on carts. Coffee brewing. Wheelchairs rolling quietly through the halls. Travis stepped through the lobby doors, nodded to the receptionist, and walked straight toward the east wing, Rocky trotting at his side. "Morning, Officer Hale," said Frank Delaney, the facility administrator, spotting him from across the hallway. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon." "Just following up," Travis said. "Mrs. Langley's daughter wanted a little more clarity. Thought I'd stop in." Frank looked uneasy, but smiled. "Of course. You let me know if I can help." Room 218 was still empty. Mrs. Langley had been transferred to the hospital 2 nights ago and wasn't expected back anytime soon. Travis let Rocky off leash inside the room. The German shepherd moved like a bloodhound, his nose sweeping low, snorting softly as he passed the dresser, the window, and finally the bed. Then he stopped. He sat beside the side table drawer, the same one from the day before, and scratched gently. Travis opened it. Same contents. Magazines. A TV remote. A packet of tissues. And there, folded between pages of Better Homes and Gardens, a soft, white cloth. Travis pulled it out using gloves. It smelled faintly of lavender. Clean. Sterile. Too sterile. Rocky sniffed the cloth again, let out a low whine, and backed away. Travis sealed it in an evidence bag. In the hallway, Nurse Madison Bell was already on shift. She moved between rooms with her usual warmth, offering a shoulder rub to one resident, a warm cup of tea to another. She wore her signature white sneakers, her scrubs neatly pressed, and that ever-present smile. But Rocky didn't smile back. The moment she passed by, he stopped, tail stiff, ears pinned, eyes locked on her cart. Madison looked down at him and chuckled. "Still doesn't like me, huh?" she said to Travis. "Rocky's particular," Travis replied. Has a nose for things most of us miss. She pushed her cart down the hall, and Rocky turned his head, still watching, even after she disappeared around the corner. Back at his cruiser, Travis pulled out his phone and dialed the lab in Albany. "Yeah," he said, leaning against the hood. "I dropped off a cloth sample this morning, priority tag. Name's Hale. Officer Travis Hale." There was a pause. "We just got the rush results," the tech said. "Not a ton came back. No blood, no narcotics. But there are faint traces of something we don't usually see outside hospice units. Lorafenol. You ever hear of it? Sedative?" Travis asked. "Not just a sedative. It's used in palliative care. Powerful. Can suppress respiration in high doses. Usually administered in controlled environments by end-of-life specialists." Travis closed his eyes. That wasn't what he wanted to hear. How much was on the cloth? Trace amounts, but concentrated. Someone soaked it. He thanked the lab and hung up. Lorafenol. A drug used to ease someone's final hours. Not prescribed to Mrs. Langley. Not listed on any of her records. And certainly not approved for use in a senior living facility like this one. Later that afternoon, Travis requested to speak with Briar Ridge's medication coordinator, a soft-spoken woman named Heather. "I'm just trying to understand what's logged versus what's actually being used," he said. Heather pulled up the electronic charting system. "Everything that's administered is recorded here," she explained. "If something was given outside the system, it wasn't by a licensed nurse, or it was a mistake. Could anyone access controlled meds off the record?" She hesitated. "Only if they had the keys and the clearance. But we audit regularly. Everything's sealed and counted." Travis thanked her and stood to leave, but paused at the door. "Do you ever work the night shift?" Heather shook her head. "I have twins. Can't handle overnights anymore." "So who usually does?" She looked down. "Mostly Madison." That evening, Travis sat on his porch again, same as the night before. Rocky curled up beside him, still unusually alert. A light breeze blew across the front yard, rattling the wind chimes. Travis sipped from a soda can and pulled out a manila folder. He had requested Madison Bell's employment history from the state database. It wasn't easy to get. She'd changed counties 4 times in the last 6 years. Each job had ended quietly. No official complaints. No lawsuits. No criminal record. But in every location, at least one resident under her care had suffered a sudden medical event, followed by a resignation within the month. Too many coincidences. Too many folded cloths. Too many smiles. Travis ran a search on local pharmacy vendors who supplied hospice drugs. None had delivered Lorafenol to Briar Ridge in over 2 years. So where was it coming from? He looked down at Rocky, who had stood up now, staring at the front gate. The dog barked once, sharp and focused. Across the street, a car was parked just past the streetlight. Unmarked. A woman sat in the driver's seat, her face dimly visible behind the windshield. It was Madison. She didn't get out. Didn't wave. Didn't even blink. Just sat there, watching. Then slowly pulled away and disappeared down the hill. Inside the house, Travis jotted down one line in his notebook. "She knows I'm watching." He looked at Rocky. "She's not going to stop, is she?" Rocky gave a low growl. He didn't think so either. At Briar Ridge, nightfall brought a deceptive peace. The halls grew quiet, overhead lights dimmed to a soft amber, and classical music trickled faintly from the lobby speakers. To the untrained eye, it felt safe. Comforting. But K-9 officer Travis Hale had learned to listen when silence felt too perfect. And tonight, that silence didn't sit right. Not after 3 residents had been hospitalized in less than 2 weeks, all from the same East Wing. All sudden. All unexplained. And all with one thing in common: Nurse Madison Bell. Travis leaned against his cruiser in the staff parking lot, sipping lukewarm coffee from a travel mug and watching the glow of second-story windows. Next to him, Rocky lay in the passenger seat, eyes half closed but ears twitching with every sound. It was 11:43 p.m. Madison had clocked in 15 minutes ago. She wore the same snow-white scrubs, hair tied back in a neat bun, smile unwavering. Like always. But Travis wasn't watching her face anymore. He was watching her hands. And tonight, she was carrying that same white cloth in her front pocket. The one Rocky barked at. The one that disappeared from the room of a now hospitalized patient. Travis didn't have a warrant. Not yet. But he had instincts. And Rocky had a nose that had never failed him. Earlier that evening, he'd installed a small motion-triggered camera inside room 214, a vacant room Madison often walked into without explanation. The tech was discreet, embedded in the headboard of an unused bed. The facility's administrator hadn't approved it officially. But after hours of paperwork and 2 polite, "we'll look into it" responses, Travis had decided to act. He didn't need permission to protect vulnerable people. By 12:16 a.m., the live feed pinged his phone. Motion detected, room 214. Travis sat up straight, tapping into the camera's stream. There she was. Madison Bell. Alone. She stepped inside the darkened room slowly, like she'd done it before. Her hands were gloved. Her movements deliberate. She approached the empty bed, and laid the white cloth down on the pillow. Then she stood there. Just stood. Silent. Still. Watching the bed. It would have looked absurd if it weren't so deeply unsettling. Then she reached into her pocket again, pulled out a small bottle, and sprayed something onto the cloth. 2 quick sprays. And then she picked it back up, folded it neatly, and left. Travis's blood ran cold. Rocky, sensing the shift, sat up beside him in the car, tail flicking once against the seat. "Let's go," Travis muttered. Inside the facility, the night nurse barely noticed him pass through. Rocky led the way, his nails clicking softly against the laminate floor. Travis entered room 214, careful not to disturb anything. The cloth was gone, of course. Madison had taken it with her. But Rocky went straight to the pillow, nose to the fabric. He froze. Then he growled. Not loud, but deep. He turned toward the wastebin near the small bathroom, sniffed around the base, and pawed once. Inside, beneath used gloves and empty paper wrappers, Travis found it, the cloth. Still damp. He pulled out an evidence bag and sealed it, hands steady despite the adrenaline pounding in his ears. "I knew it," he whispered. Back in the cruiser, he called it in. "I need a rush lab on a chemical cloth sample. Possible sedative or respiratory agent. Priority level, high." Then he dropped Rocky off at home and spent the next 2 hours combing through the camera logs Jamie, the CNA, had given him. There was a pattern. Madison walked the halls at the same time every night. Between 12:15 and 12:30 a.m., she'd visit at least one room unscheduled. Not every room. Not the same ones. But always the ones with the most fragile residents. Travis made a chart. Room numbers. Dates. Incident reports. It lined up. Every hospitalization had occurred within 48 hours of those unscheduled visits. And every single one had Nurse Madison listed as primary caregiver on duty. At 4:03 a.m., the hospital called him back. The results were in. The cloth tested positive for trace amounts of lorafenol, a restricted sedative used only in end-of-life care. It also contained remnants of a chemical cousin to chloroform, once used decades ago to induce unconsciousness. Travis stared at the results, stunned. This wasn't just negligence. This was deliberate. And dangerous. The next morning, he returned to Briar Ridge without a uniform. Just jeans, a plain flannel shirt, and a folder tucked under one arm. He waited by the nurse's exit around 7:15 a.m., knowing Madison always finished her shift by sunrise. When she stepped out into the cool morning light, her smile faltered the moment she saw him. "Officer Hale," she said smoothly. "Back again? Mind if we chat for a minute?" Travis asked. She hesitated. "Is something wrong?" He held up the evidence bag. "You tell me." Her face didn't move. Not an inch. But her hand twitched, just once, toward her bag. Travis didn't wait. He stepped forward, gently but firmly placing a hand on her arm. "You're not under arrest. But you are under investigation. I strongly suggest you don't leave town." She smiled again, but this time, it didn't reach her eyes. "I've done nothing wrong," she said. And walked away. Back at the station, Travis filled out the paperwork for a search warrant. The pieces were coming together now. Slowly. Carefully. Legally. And Rocky? He sat by the door, tail still, eyes locked on the hallway like he was waiting for something, or someone, to make a mistake. They didn't have all the evidence yet. But thanks to Rocky, they had proof of intent. And soon, they'd have a case. By Tuesday morning, Officer Travis Hale had already memorized the names of every patient recently hospitalized from Briar Ridge. 6 in the last 2 months. All of them elderly. All of them assigned to Nurse Madison Bell on the nights they suddenly fell ill. Coincidence was no longer on the table. And K9 Rocky? He hadn't stopped pacing since sunrise. They arrived at the facility just after breakfast. Most of the residents were gathered in the rec room watching reruns of the Andy Griffith Show. But Rocky wasn't interested in vintage television or the smell of oatmeal wafting through the hallway. His nose was busy catching a trail. Something sharp. Something chemical. Travis had asked for permission to do a routine sweep. The facility administrator, Mr. Alden Price, was reluctant, but Travis flashed a signed warrant and said, "We're looking into irregular medical handling. It's not optional." Price gave a tight nod and motioned them toward the east wing. Rocky led the way, nose close to the floor, moving with quick bursts of energy between residents' doors. Travis noticed that the dog didn't stop at room 218 this time. Instead, Rocky made a hard turn at the junction and stopped, abruptly, at a supply closet marked authorized personnel only. "Here we go," Travis murmured. He turned the knob. Locked. "Mr. Price," Travis called back. "I'll need the key to this." The administrator fumbled with his ring, then handed it over, muttering something about routine housekeeping supplies. But when Travis opened the door, the air shifted. Rocky let out a low growl. Inside, beneath rows of cleaning fluid and latex gloves, sat a box labeled "Expired Meds, to be disposed." Travis knelt beside it. "Rocky, check." The dog sniffed. Then let out a short bark. Inside were multiple opened vials, some broken, some half full. Most of the labels were faded or torn off entirely. But one stood out. Lorafenol. It was a restricted sedative. Not commonly used. And when it was, only under strict end-of-life care. Travis pulled out a plastic evidence bag and gently placed the vial inside. Behind the box, folded neatly, were 3 cloths, white, with faint yellow stains around the edges. They looked just like the one Rocky had barked at in Madison's hand. Later that day, Travis sat in his cruiser with the heat turned low and his laptop open across the console. The hospital had finally called back. 3 of the 6 residents recently admitted from Briar Ridge had trace amounts of lorafenol in their systems, despite no official record of its administration. And one of those residents, Mrs. Carmichael, had been listed as unresponsive due to natural causes. She died last week. No autopsy had been ordered. Until now. Travis quietly requested it himself. Back at the station, Travis pulled the employment file on Madison Bell. What he found wasn't comforting. 6 nursing jobs in the past 10 years. Always in elder care. Always glowing evaluations. And always, short-term. Each resignation was paired with vague language like staff incompatibility or personal relocation. He started calling around. Only 2 facilities returned his calls. At both, residents had died unexpectedly. But no one ever questioned it. Why would they? They were elderly. And Madison, she was the kindest nurse they had. The next morning, Travis returned to Briar Ridge under the guise of reviewing inventory procedures. He stopped by the nurse's station. Madison sat at the computer, entering notes into a patient chart. Her smile was as bright as ever. "Back again, officer?" she asked. "Just doing my job," Travis replied. Rocky sat beside him, quiet but alert. His gaze never left her gloved hand resting on the desk. "We're doing a sweep of all medical carts today," Travis added casually. "Mind if I start with yours?" Madison's smile faltered, but just for a second. "Sure," she said, pushing it toward him. Travis opened the top drawer. Standard gauze, bandages, a stethoscope. The second drawer held a few bottles of over-the-counter pain relievers and blood pressure cuffs. But the bottom drawer was where Rocky's ears perked. He sniffed, then sat down. That was his alert. Inside the drawer was a small unlabeled spray bottle, tucked beside a roll of cotton pads. Travis held it up. "What's this?" Madison waved a hand. "Disinfectant mix. I make it myself, vinegar and water. Cheaper than the name-brand stuff." Travis nodded but bagged it anyway. As he left the station, Madison called after him, still smiling, "Let me know if you find anything dangerous hiding in vinegar." At the lab, they ran the cloths, vials, and spray bottle through initial analysis. The results chilled Travis to the bone. All 3 cloths were soaked with lorafenol. The spray bottle? Not vinegar. A mix of chloroform-based anesthetics diluted just enough to avoid immediate suspicion, but strong enough to incapacitate a frail, elderly patient. The pieces were falling into place. Madison wasn't just a night nurse. She was creating silence. Back at Briar Ridge, Travis ran into Jamie, the same CNA who'd handed him the hallway footage days ago. "She's working late again tonight," Jamie whispered. "Room 214. Mr. Collier. He's been getting anxious lately. Talks in his sleep. Keeps saying someone's coming into his room at night." "Does he remember who?" Travis asked. Jamie hesitated. "He says it's the one with the pretty smile." That night, Travis and Rocky parked across the street from Briar Ridge. He'd hidden a small camera inside room 214 earlier that afternoon, tucked into a decorative plant on the nightstand. At 3:02 a.m., the alert came. Movement detected. Travis tapped the feed. Madison Bell entered the room silently. She leaned over Mr. Collier, whispered something into his ear, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a cloth. As she raised it toward his face, the screen cut to static. Travis hit the gas. Rocky barked once, loud and sharp, as if saying, "Go now." They weren't just chasing suspicion anymore. They were chasing a predator in scrubs. By the 5th day of Officer Travis Hale's quiet investigation, the cheerful halls of Briar Ridge Care Center didn't feel so warm anymore. The fake flowers at the reception desk still bloomed under LED lights. The soft jazz still played over the lobby speakers. And Nurse Madison Bell still smiled her practiced, perfect smile. But behind the scenes, fear was spreading like wildfire, and not just among the residents. Because now, Travis wasn't the only one watching her. Rocky was too. And he wasn't just watching, he was waiting. It started with a whisper. Mr. Collier, age 79, sharp mind, war vet, and one of the only residents still physically mobile, waved Travis into his room as he walked past on patrol. "You looking into Nurse Bell?" the old man asked, voice low, like the walls themselves might be listening. Travis kept his response neutral. "Just checking on everyone." Mr. Collier leaned in. "She's got a habit. Comes around late. Always smells like hospital cleaner and fake flowers. And when she leaves, people sleep too hard." Travis narrowed his eyes. "You seen her give anything to residents?" "No. But I heard the same thing more than once." He paused. "They said she put something over their mouths. Like they were too loud, and she needed quiet." Back at the nurse's station, Madison was logging notes on a tablet. As always, polished. Unflappable. She looked up and offered a glowing smile the moment Travis approached. "How's the investigation going?" she asked sweetly. "Just routine," Travis replied. Rocky sniffed around her cart. Madison laughed and gave him a playful wave. "Still don't like me, huh? I guess some dogs never forget." Rocky didn't bark this time. Instead, he froze. His nose hovered just above the bottom drawer of her rolling nurse's cart. His head tilted. Then he pawed it, once, then again, hard enough to rattle the metal. "Easy, boy," Travis said, though his voice was already tight. He crouched and unlocked the drawer with Madison's key. Inside were gloves, bandages, and a white cloth. Folded. Damp. There was also a small, unlabeled spray bottle tucked behind a pack of sterile gauze. "What's this?" Travis asked. "Disinfectant," Madison answered too quickly. "Just alcohol. I clean door handles and bed rails." Rocky took another deep sniff and let out a low growl, his warning growl. Travis nodded slowly, bagged the cloth and bottle, and stood up. "I'll take these with me. Standard procedure." Madison's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. "Of course, officer. Anything to help." Later that evening, Travis sat at his kitchen table, gloved hands carefully unfolding the cloth over a steel evidence tray. Rocky lay at his feet, alert as ever. The cloth had no visible stains. But the chemical scent was sharp, burning the back of his throat. He sealed it in a lab bag and sent it to the crime lab downtown with a priority request. The label? Potential chemical agent used on vulnerable adult. At 10:43 p.m., the toxicology report arrived via email. Lorafenol. A banned sedative with intense respiratory suppression effects. Used decades ago in hospitals before being pulled from circulation. It wasn't meant to knock people out. It was meant to silence them. Travis leaned back in his chair, the realization chilling. She wasn't just a nurse with boundary issues. She was hunting silence. The next morning, Travis requested Madison's shift schedule. She was consistently assigned to rooms where residents had fallen into unexplained comas, or been rushed to the ER without cause. 5 patients. All in the last 3 months. All in rooms with no cameras. He had enough for surveillance, but not an arrest. So he decided to wait. At 2:12 a.m., the alert came. Motion detected in room 217. The resident, Mrs. Durham, had mild dementia and trouble sleeping. Her son had begged Travis to watch over her. The hidden camera Travis had installed behind the wall art picked up everything. Nurse Madison entered, glancing down both ends of the hallway before stepping inside. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a cloth, white, damp. She leaned over Mrs. Durham, placed the cloth over her mouth. And that's when Rocky barked. Not on the camera, but in real life. Loud. Furious. And from right outside the room. Travis kicked the door open. Police. Step away from her. Madison spun, startled. Her hand still clutched the cloth. Her eyes went wide, but not with guilt. With rage. You don't understand, she needed rest. Rocky growled, low and steady. Travis stepped forward, cuffs out. Turn around. Hands behind your back. She dropped the cloth and screamed, I helped them. They couldn't sleep. I brought peace. Travis didn't argue. He didn't speak. He just cuffed her and took her away. Back at the station, the other cloths tested positive for multiple sedatives, lorafenol, chloroform variants, even traces of hospice-only medications not stocked at Briar Ridge. The bottle from her cart? Same thing. The motive? Still unclear. But the pattern was undeniable. Madison had a profile, elderly, frail, often isolated. She'd approach late at night, offering comfort. And one by one, they had faded. That afternoon, Travis returned to Briar Ridge. Rocky walked beside him, not on alert, but proud. Focused. Inside, the mood had shifted. Nurses no longer smiled with forced cheer. The staff avoided eye contact. Some cried. Some whispered. One quietly thanked him. But the most important voice belonged to Mrs. Langley, now recovered and sitting up in her recliner. She kept pressing something to my face, she whispered. I told her no, but I couldn't move. Travis knelt beside her. You're safe now. Rocky rested his head on her lap. She smiled for the first time in days. Madison Bell was charged with 5 counts of attempted murder, 4 counts of aggravated assault, and multiple charges of elder abuse. Her trial would take months. But Travis didn't need to wait for the verdict. Because justice had already begun, with one bark, from a dog who didn't let smiles fool him. And who refused to let evil wear scrubs. The hallway of Briar Ridge was silent, too silent. The night shift had just begun. Most of the residents were already in bed, their rooms dimly lit by nightlights and the quiet hum of medical machines. Officer Travis Hale sat in his unmarked SUV parked just outside the facility. He was watching the live feed from the new hallway camera they'd installed 2 days earlier. It was disguised inside a motion sensor unit, pointed directly at room 210, home to 91-year-old Mrs. Prescott, a kind but forgetful woman who'd recently mentioned seeing someone standing over her at night. Everyone brushed it off. But Rocky hadn't. Rocky paced in the back of the SUV, nose twitching, ears perked. He let out a low whine and looked at Travis. The way he moved, agitated, alert, it was clear something was coming. Travis knew that look. All right, buddy, he said softly, let's get ready. Inside the facility, Nurse Madison Bell moved through the East Wing with her usual quiet confidence. Her uniform crisp, her shoes squeaking softly against the linoleum floor, her expression calm as ever. She checked her watch, 2:06 a.m. She stopped by the linen cart, bent down, and removed a folded white cloth from the bottom drawer. The same kind of cloth Rocky had barked at before. She smoothed it with gloved hands and turned toward room 210. Travis saw it. The live feed showed her entering the room. His heart rate jumped. He grabbed the radio. Dispatch, this is Hale. Confirming entry into room 210 by suspect Madison Bell. Moving in now. He jumped out of the SUV, Rocky already leaping down beside him, leash tight in Travis's grip. Let's go, boy. By the time they reached the door, the hall was deathly quiet. No sounds. No alarms. Just the slow, steady creak of a single bed spring. Travis turned the knob slowly. The door wasn't locked. He pushed it open, gently. There she was. Madison stood over Mrs. Prescott's bed, one hand over the woman's mouth, pressing the cloth firmly against her face. Her other hand gripped a small vial, opened and nearly empty. Rocky barked, loud, sharp, and terrifying. Madison jumped, stumbling back. Mrs. Prescott gasped for air, her eyes wide and terrified. Travis moved in fast, weapon drawn. "Don't move." Madison dropped the cloth and raised her hands slowly, face pale, expression frozen in shock. "This isn't what it looks like," she began. "Hands where I can see them." Travis barked, voice firm. "Now." Rocky stayed between the bed and Madison, his stance protective, low, and ready. Within minutes, backup arrived. EMTs rushed in to check on Mrs. Prescott, who, thankfully, had only suffered minor exposure. The sedative hadn't taken full effect. Madison was handcuffed and escorted out under silent glares from the staff who had once praised her. "You don't understand," she said again, this time to Travis, her voice trembling as they led her down the hallway. "They were suffering. I was just helping them pass peacefully." Travis didn't respond. He didn't have to. Back at the station, Madison finally broke. In the interrogation room, she confessed to it all. She had used chloroform and untraceable sedatives on at least 5 elderly residents over the last year. Always the ones without family. Always the ones who complained too much or kept her up at night. They begged for rest, she said coldly, her smile long gone. "I gave them peace." Travis stared through the glass window, jaw tight. He'd heard confessions before. But never one that made his skin crawl quite like this. Evidence flooded in. The rag from room 210 tested positive for loraphenol and chloroform. The vials hidden in the closet? Unlabeled, undocumented, and illegal. The camera footage? Clear enough to seal a conviction. Madison Bell was charged with 5 counts of attempted murder, elder abuse, tampering with medical records, and unlawful possession of controlled substances. Her trial was scheduled within the month. A week later, Travis returned to Briar Ridge, not as a cop, but as a friend. He walked quietly through the East Wing with Rocky at his side, nodding to the nurses, who now looked him in the eye with something that felt like relief. Room 210 had a new bedspread. Mrs. Prescott was recovering well. And for the first time in months, the residents were sleeping soundly. Travis knocked gently on the door of room 203. Inside, Miss Helen, one of the sharpest residents, smiled warmly at the sight of Rocky. "He saved her, didn't he?" she said. "He did," Travis nodded. Rocky walked over and gently rested his chin on her lap. "You always believed him," she said, rubbing behind his ears. "Dogs don't lie." Travis smiled. "No. They never do." Later that night, Travis sat on his front porch. The autumn wind rustled through the leaves, and Rocky lay beside his boots, head resting on his paws, finally calm. The town paper had already run the headline. K9 dog exposes nursing home predator. But the real story wasn't about headlines. It was about listening, to instincts, to survivors, and yes, to dogs. Because without Rocky's bark, Nurse Madison Bell would still be smiling. Still walking the halls. Still holding that cloth. Thank you for following this emotional and suspenseful journey with Officer Travis and K9 Rocky. Their courage helped uncover a chilling truth that was hidden behind a perfect smile. Would you have trusted the dog's warning, before seeing the proof? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true-to-life K9 rescue stories that uncover the truth, one bark at a time.